Thanks for coming out and watching the oxymoronic Reddit Professional Show, where I showcase the best and worst of the internet. Here I comment on brilliant and hilarious comment chains regarding dumb shit on the internet for you to enjoy. Make sure to subscribe, hit the little bell button so that you get notifications every time we come up with a new video. Enjoy this week's show.
The 4 Laws of Tenant Screening. I'll put the best info up front. If you want to avoid late payments, minimize damage, and overall cultivate quality tenants, your screening process needs to account for the following 4 things. Credit score of 600 or higher, consider going to 650 in some areas. Clean criminal background with no felonies, some jurisdictions will not allow you to refuse felons, check with a local lawyer/realtor. No past due balances to landlords or utility companies. Monthly income of 3x the rent or more. This is the criteria that my company uses to screen tenants for the 620 properties that we manage. Using this method, we have over 95% of tenants pay on time with a $0 balance on their ledger, even during COVID. Our average vacancy is under 2 weeks per year. Our average property turn is under $300, and over 95% of turns cost less than the security deposit. It's not a foolproof method, nothing is, but it's consistent and it protects us and our homes in most scenarios. Those 4 are pretty obvious. Here are 4 common mistakes to avoid that I see private owners make all the time. No cosigners. Don't fall for sob stories. If anything seems fishy, run. Never compromise, even if your home stays vacant a little while. Cosigners. With the possible exception of college towns with young students just starting out, you should never accept cosigners. If a tenant is in need of a cosigner to begin with, this shows they can't handle their own finances. They are an accident looking for a place to happen. Point them to a life coach or financial specialist who can help them get back on track, but do not make their problems your problems. Not to mention, the vast majority of cosigners think it's a letter of recommendation type situation and have no intention of paying for their delinquent friends/family. Don't fall for sob stories. Hurricane Katrina displaced me from my home, and I couldn't find a job in the 2008 recession. When I finally got my feet underneath me in 2014, my kid got leukemia and I got diabetes. I had to go to part-time, then my wife left me and I lost the house. Look, I don't mean to be cynical here, but don't let someone else make their problems your problems. If a person falls on hard times and needs financial help, there are thousands of missions, support groups, churches, and charities in the world designed to get people the help they need. If you feel a personal call from God to be this type of change in the world, go volunteer at any one of these places, but don't use your rental as a charity. I keep a mental list of the best local missions and charities so that I can point those in need to people who can best help them. I am not a professional problem solver. I know housing and that's what I provide. If anything seems fishy, run. When people let their financial situation go south, they get desperate. Some use this desperation to get the help they need and get their life in order. Some turn to fraud. I've had women say they were living alone, only to sneak their so with 5 counts of felony assault into the home. I've had people use their family's SSN to apply for the home. I've had suspicious gaps in employment/housing history, etc. Never compromise. In almost every situation where I give someone the benefit of the doubt, something shady comes up, and I end up regretting my decision. It's almost always better to refund their application fee and let the property sit a week or 2 than to take the gamble. Great advice and rules. I feel like some of these requirements aren't possible in C, D, B properties. Would be nice to hear some folks chime in on how they get excellent tenants on their lower income properties. I'll accept bad credit if rental history and employment is good, especially if it's student loans or medical debt. I'll accept no rental history if employment and credit is great with references. I look for the story to make sense. Why does this person want to live here? I also agree that waiting for the right tenant is smart, but understand what a good tenant is for the type of property you own. 3x the rent is the non-negotiable though. Recipe for disaster to go below that. Not trying to be snarky, but yes, this advice is to get the best tenants. If you know your houses won't attract the best tenants, then you naturally will have to make compromises, and these sacrifices don't always pan out in your favor with the low-income properties. I hope someone with a C or D property understood that when they bought the property. I think outside of the credit requirements, unless we're talking bad credit, you can find people who match those requirements in lower-income properties. You may just need to lower rent for the 3x and filter. There are a lot of people out there who pay their bills, don't cause problems, etc., but they just for one reason or another don't have a decent paying job. Maybe they're on SS, maybe they're young and only have a HS degree. I think it feels tougher because you get trickled down from higher income people who suck at finances or are otherwise crap tenants that can't get Class A properties and are stuck looking at B/C/D, so you feel that so many applying to lower income sucks. In contrast, there's no trickle up, where good tenants with low-paying jobs are trying to apply to Class A properties. I've used the rule, never rent to someone that you would not invite to your home for dinner. The one time I broke that rule, it was a total mess. I should add that I fell for the sob story, see number 2 common mistake. That's actually a good barometer. I've made exceptions on felonies in the past, and never regretted it. Depends on what it was, and when, as well as what they've done with their life since. Some of the drug charges of the not-too-distant past were outright draconian. If they are upfront and honest about it, and have made good strides since with job and other apartments, have good verifiable references from employer and past landlord, I'll take the risk. And if they move on from my apartment, I send them with a good letter of recommendation to include with their future apartment or mortgage application. Operative phrase being passed. I'll give someone a pass for a small weed charge 7 years ago. But domestic violence last year is more threatening to me. Definitely. I'm closing on a duplex in the next week and it will be about a month until the other unit is rent ready. I plan on managing the unit myself. As a self-managing property manager, what websites or companies should I be using to screen tenants? I've heard Cosy has some tenant screening resources. What should I use for credit checks, background checks, etc.? I have a general lease document. As an experienced property manager, is there any extra things I should include on it to protect myself? Anything reading material you would recommend or other things I should consider so I don't get screwed in the middle of a pandemic? Thanks. I just used Cosy for my first rental. The rental application was excellent because I got everything I needed without having to create a formal rental form. You only need a lease. You can sign that lease and upload it so both parties can see. You can schedule the security deposit and first month's rent automatically without exchanging bank information, just send links through email. There's many perks to using Cosy. The initial application fee is $40 per person. That's a pretty good first screening tool too. There's not much difference that I've found in the background screening programs because they just pull the history. So use someone quick, with an easy-to-read report, under $20 per application. I use Resolve Credit Partners, but I'm sure there's no real difference. My personal biggest red flag is statements like, "I'm a great housekeeper," or, "I've never had any problems with my previous landlords." For the first one, people don't remember that Facebook is real and that they post pictures from inside their home. Plus, I look in their car when I'm greeting you at a showing. If it's a disaster area, I'm automatically suspicious about their ability to keep my property clean. Also, pro tip, if they live in their local market, drive by their current residence. The outside will be indicative of the inside 9/10 times. Also, if they tell me that they've never had problems, I ask for more references than I normally would since I feel like there's something to hide there. I've lived in places where the walls had marks, the carpets could have been changed out a decade earlier, etc. Like it looked bad, we kept it picked up, and as clean as we could, but if you just look at a photo on FB, you would never know that that was damage that was there when we got there, and at the time it was really our only option within our budget. By all means, check, but check secondary sources too if you can. Agree 100%. I also find that letting potential tenants know this criteria upfront and in your ads will save you so much time showing unqualified people your places. The one time I ignored these rules, it bit me in the ass, and now I am actually paying someone to leave. With one important caveat. If your product is 5+ units, fair housing laws apply to you. You cannot under any circumstances say/do/post things that violate these laws. Examples include, no students/no sector 8, in states where SWA is a protected class, 55+ only, unless you have a HUD voucher explicitly stating this. No criminals. Felonies will be denied, etc. Disparate impact. I would also be wary of these convos over the phone. I list on Rent Cafe and I have had several people call me to try and get me to commit a disparate impact violation over the phone. I don't put it in the ad, but I'm very straightforward in the first email. This is the rent, these are the fees, this is your total monthly payment, this is your deposit, this is the app fee, you need at least 3x rent in income to qualify. Students and Section 8 housing vouchers aren't protected classes under federal fair housing laws. This sounds like something that is specific to your area. Age, race, religion, gender, family status, disability, veteran. Then the National Association of Realtors adds sexual orientation, so if you're a realtor you have to abide by that, but private owners can actually ignore it. 55+ has exceptions for bona fide retirement communities, but you mentioned that. Criminals are not a protected class federally, some cities have stricter laws. In my area you can deny felonies. Rule 4 will be really hard to achieve in some areas such NYC metro area. Rents are high here, and unless you have a couple roommates or have a very high-paying job, you won't meet Rule 4. And at this rate with COVID, I know more people are looking to buy than rent. Rents around here are almost as much, if not more, than a mortgage. We can play the exception game all day long. I hope common sense will take over and let you adjust if your area is an outlier. Red flags on first contact. What are your requirements? Is this direct from the owner? Almost always run. I have a lot of younger tenants, so do accept cosigners. But a costly lesson was, only accept related cosigners. I had a prominent reporter present to cosign for a couple of girls who appeared from a poorer background. I am thinking, these must be top students from their school to even have that connection, should be fine. Police called to fights, drugged out people in yard, and eventually a few $1,000s damages later, I call the cosigner. Oh, I guess I need to hire them a lawyer, she said. Zero responsibility, and it turns out cosigner was just a SJW type. Never again. If someone doesn't have a relative who will cosign, run. I don't look at credit score, only report. I don't want to see any issues on the credit report. Any at all. I do ignore medical. Another huge red flag is age of someone who has no rental history. I was burned recently by a 30-year-old who was just moving out of home. He was a complete nightmare, paid his rent but started fires in yard, would call at 9 p.m. on a Saturday night for minor maintenance issues, demanding they were fixed by 6 a.m. Sunday morning. Clearly any landlord would give a terrible reference, so he goes around saying he just moved out of home. With all due respect, I have a lot that I disagree with in your post. What are your requirements? They could be a new renter, or new to the area. I think this is a very reasonable question and would not be a red flag at all for me. Is this a property manager or owner? There are plenty of reasons this could be an innocent question as well. Perhaps they just got burned by a bad owner and want the stability of a property manager. Perhaps they're on an odd timeline and want to speak directly to the owner to work out a different end date. Maybe they are looking for a deal on rent and think that property managers would have stricter pricing. Related cosigners are just as flaky as non-related cosigners. The vast majority don't realize they are agreeing to pay when their baby girl defaults. They still refuse to pay, but now you have family drama. No rental history is a bit weird at 30, but I'd have no issue with no rental history on a 23-year-old. Overall, I'd advise anyone reading this to not attempt to finesse my rules. My office uses them and we have over 70 years experience with thousands of properties over the decades. We have 4 rules and they work well. The issue with using a credit score is length of credit history is such a high part of score. A younger paying who has never missed a payment will often have a lower score than an older person with the odd issue. I don't exclude people who ask, what are your requirements? I treat everyone equally. But 95% of the time it is someone with issues who wouldn't pass. 5% of the time it is someone young who needs guidance and is fine. I agree no rental history in early 20s is normal. The guy at 30 who was a disaster I only realized after accepting. I now match credit report addresses to validate. Most credit scores start between 620 to 660. We chose 600 because you have to actively mismanage your money to drop below 600. I've only seen one exception to this in my 7 years of looking at credit scores. Nothing was wrong and it still came out to 585. That score is generally reliable. What if you wanted to go above the 3x rule? Like you buy an underpriced rental and can rent it out cheaper than surrounding rentals, but you want to keep the tenants within a certain income demographic. That's a personal choice and a weird one. Why are you intentionally pushing away people who can afford your home? I only care that people manage their money well. I do not care how much they make. You are not an inherently better person at $200,000 per year compared to $40,000 per year. You just have a more marketable skill.
If you enjoyed this week's effective way to waste time, hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. If you are enjoying the series, leave me a comment below. A special shout out to the content creators. You frickin' rock.